Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montavilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about sergers. Now, many people are reluctant to use a serger because of all the various settings. They seem a little intimidating. But in this video, I'm going to simplify things so that you can get a serger seam that looks like this. Notice right on the edge, the loopers meet right on the edge of the fabric with a little bit of space between the fabric and the loop. The needle threads are nice and straight, and on the underside you can see them a little tiny bit, but hardly at all. That is a perfect serger seam. Now, different machines and different models will have these adjustments in different places. Like for instance with this, we have our stitch width over here, and on this machine we have our stitch width on this knob right here. This one has sliders for the tension, this one has knobs for the thread tension, and this one doesn't have any adjustment except inside here. We have this lever for whatever kind of stitch you want. It'll give you the perfect thread tensions. In this one we have the differential being this knob right here, but on this kind of machine we have the differential as a lever right here. So you can see, even though the machines might look a little bit different, they basically have the same adjustment capabilities. Here's a quick overview of the kind of problems that you can have on a serger, and after this overview we'll go into specifics on how to solve each of these problems. Over here we have thread tension problems both with the loopers and with the needle threads. Here we have cutting width problems. Here we have thread tension problems caused by the thread tree not being raised all the way up, or it could be twisted. And here is where a serging seam was attempted without lowering the presser foot, so there was no tension on any of the threads at all. And this is where the cutting blade was disengaged, and as you can see it kind of scrunched up the fabric. Right here we have the stitch finger disengaged as it would be for a rolled hem, but we're not trying to do a rolled hem, so you can see it didn't make a good seam. So we need to have that engaged. This is an example of the differential being too tight. This could also be caused by the needle threads being too tight. This is an example of sewing on a piece of knit that tends to get wavy. This is all with the normal settings, but because the knit tends to stretch out, we would need to adjust the differential. This is an example of the looper threads being out of adjustment. You can see how they don't meet right on the edge. It looks like the lower looper thread, which is the red one, is too tight, and the upper looper is too loose. Actually, in this sample, I just loosened the upper looper, which caused the lower looper to tighten up. Now, to fix something like this, you may need to adjust both loopers or possibly just the one that's looser. In the next sample, we have the loopers being just fine, but it's the needle threads that are too loose. Notice they look okay on the right side, but on the back, there's lots of loops here in the needle threads. They need to be tightened up. In the next sample, we have the width being a little out of adjustment. Notice how the seam inside the stitch is a little bit scrunched up. That's from the seam width being too narrow. This is an example of the stitch width being too wide. Notice there are loops that hang off the edge of the fabric. Next, we have a problem with the thread tree not being raised. Sometimes we get a stitch that looks okay, but sometimes we don't. And here we actually have a broken thread. Now make sure that thread tree that's right above your spools is all the way up. And also make sure that it's not twisted. It needs to be straight up. Another issue that could cause something like this is if your threads are caught somewhere, like under a spool or on the back of your machine somewhere. So make sure that the threads can flow freely from each spool. Here's an example of the presser foot was raised and not lowered, so there was no tension on any of the threads. And as you can see, every thread was loose. So make sure your presser foot is down when you start serging. Also, you'll notice that if it's up, it's not going to pull the feed dogs are not going to pull the fabric along. Here's an example of the cutting mechanism, the upper blade being disengaged. Now notice how it kind of scrunches up the fabric like this. You need to have that smooth cut edge to make a nice stitch, so keep your blades engaged. Here's an example of the stitch finger that's disengaged for rolled hem. Now we're not trying to do a rolled hem, but you can see how it kind of changes the stitch and scrunches up that edge if that stitch finger is not engaged. Here's an example of the differential being too tight, where it sort of gathers up the fabric. Another possible cause of this would also be if the needle threads, one or both, are too tight. This is an example of a knit that was sewn on all the normal settings, but notice how we have a wavy seam. That's because the differential needs to be tightened a little bit. There are a lot of different kinds of knits, so you may need to tighten it differently, or in some cases not at all, depending on how the knit stretches and how it recovers. Other possible issues could be that your needle is bent or broken, or maybe it's dull, or maybe you haven't inserted it correctly into your machine. Also, you could have a blade that's dull, one of your cutter blades. I hope this video will help make your serging more successful and enjoyable. We have lots of other videos here on our YouTube channel, so give us a like and subscribe. And if you have comments, questions, or ideas for other videos you'd like to see, let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Bye.